the recording here for the next part, and we're going to talk about chapter 1 today. Okay, so if you're ready to take notes, I can't find my cursor. Are you kidding me? I don't know what happened there. All right, let's try this one more time. I know what happened. All right. Okay, let's talk about chapter 1 and what homeostasis is. This is a very important concept. All right, so homeostasis, and there's different terms that you might hear kind of in the layman's terms, overall health, wellness, balance and well-being, right? But basically what homeostasis is your body's ability to adapt or to make changes to maintain a consistent internal environment, all right, in response to changing internal and external conditions. All right, that's important to understand because, for example, right now, it is, I'm looking at my phone here because I want to see the temperature outside, and I'm in Greer, is 90 degrees right now. The room that I'm sitting in is about 75, okay? So I'm pretty comfortable. But when I go outside into that hot weather, all right, that's the external environment out there, my body is going to undergo certain changes. And it is going to try to make sure that when I step out from inside my house to outside my house, all right, into a hotter temperature, that my internal environment, my body temperature, stays within that normal range. All right, and the normal range for body temperature is 96.4 degrees to 99.1 degrees. Everyone says 98.6. Yes, 98.6 is what we call the set point. That's the normal, all right, body temperature, the ideal body temperature, okay? So my body is going to make sure that when I step outside, it's going to keep me around that 98.6 degrees. All right, so it's going to undergo some changes and some adaptions, all right, to make sure that that occurs. So what we're going to see here is, in this course, we have several physiological processes that are going on all the time. Hundreds, if not thousands of processes are constantly occurring to maintain this homeostasis. And these physiological processes are based on, all right, the anatomy, okay? Anatomy is form and structure. Physiology is function. So the function is based on the structure of these anatomical cells, tissues, and organs. And so we're constantly adjusting and monitoring what's going on. And through this course, and in 211, you're going to find out how this all occurs. So when we talk about the homeostatic systems, we're going to talk about 3 important components here. These components are vitally important. You're going to see these throughout the remaining chapters in this course and into 211. So there's 3 components: the receptor, the control center, and the effector. Okay, real basic. So let's talk about each of these individually. Now, the receptor is going to be the structure that detects any changes inside your body or outside your body. Okay, and so in order for a receptor to work, it needs what we call a stimulus. All right. And so that stimulus is going to trigger that receptor. So let's use the example that's listed here. Okay, change in body temperature, or just a change in temperature, let's say. Okay. So the change in the temperature, like I used before, me sitting here in the house, walking outside, I go out into a hot environment. So you have these receptors in your skin, they're called thermal receptors, and they monitor the temperature outside. So that will be the stimulus. That hot temperature is going to be the stimulus that those thermal receptors are going to detect a change now. I went from a cool environment to a hot environment. So they're going to send information to what we call the control center, okay? And so that information, all right, we call sensory input, is going to travel from the receptor to the control center. And what the control center is then going to do, it's going to interpret that information or that input. All right, it's going to think, all right, this is, there's a change in temperature. Now I have to figure out how I'm going to respond. So the control center interprets the input, and then it decides how it's going to respond, and it's going to initiate its response or those changes through what we call the effector. And you'll hear me from time to time say effector organs. Okay, so the control center, all right, can be two things. It can be either the nervous system or the endocrine system. The nervous system will go in detail in this course, all right? But the nervous system is going to have a much quicker response because it utilizes, all right, action potentials, which are these electrical signals. All right, we'll get into detail about that. The endocrine system is based more on chemicals. So it takes a little bit longer for a response to come around, but its response is going to be more sustained, or it will last longer. The nervous system response, all right, is quick to respond, but usually its response won't be sustained. It'll be much shorter, all right? So for example, you can see with the nervous system, the regulation of blood pressure. If you go from a sitting position or a lying down position to a standing position, all right, we need some quick responses to that, all right? Otherwise, you'll pass out because, as you know, gravity pulls everything down towards the ground. So when I go from a lying down position or from a sitting position, I quickly stand up, that blood is going to try to go down to my feet, all right, away from the brain. If the brain doesn't get enough blood, you can faint or pass out. So the nervous system is going to make sure that doesn't happen, all right? Endocrine system, perfect example, fight or flight, the adrenal glands releasing adrenaline or norepinephrine and epinephrine, all right? Again, that's a chemical response, might take a few moments longer than what a nervous system response would be, but again, it'll be more sustained. All right, so how do we bring about the changes? That's where the effector comes in, all right? And this is a structure that is going to bring about these changes, all right, due to that stimulus. And it's real simple. There's only two types of effectors, muscles and glands. You folks ever heard of the KISS principle? Some people have, some people haven't. All right. What the KISS principle is, easy. Keep it simple. All right. KISS stands for keep it simple, silly. You may have heard the other one, keep it simple, stupid, but I don't want to call people stupid, okay? So that's the principle that I am going to utilize in this course, right? Meaning I want to keep things as simple as possible. So what I mean by that is, all right, when we talk about effector organs, there's only two types, muscles and glands. And we'll get into those specific types of muscles and glands later on. But for right now, that's what your effector organ is going to be, right? Muscles and glands. All right. Hold on one second. Go away. Okay. So how can we regulate these homeostatic systems? All right. One way that we do it is through what we call the negative feedback loop. And this concept, all right, or this mechanism is going to control, you need to know this, most of the physiological processes in our body. Okay. So how does it work? You'll have a stimulus, all right, that will occur, and then you will have a response to that stimulus, all right? And that response is usually going to be in the opposite direction of the stimulus. So let me explain. Okay. So look at the picture here. You can see the set point is this black line here. So we're going to use body temperature. All right, 98.6 is going to be that set point. So your body's going to want to maintain that. Okay. So the high level of, or the high number for body temperature is 99.1. And the low is going to be 96.4. All right, so both of those, as you can see, are going to be, let me just type this out, 99.1 to 96.4. Okay, that's the range. Whoops. There we go. So there's your range. 99.1 to 96.4 is our normal range for body temperature. We try to keep it around 98.4. Or yeah, 98.6, excuse me. So as long as you're in that range, we'll consider you to have a normal body temperature. Now what happens if your body temperature goes up to, let's say, 101? So now you're outside that range. So what's going to happen? Your body is going to try to cool you down, and it's going to utilize the negative feedback system. And so its response is going to decrease your body temperature back inside this range here. Okay, so let's talk about that. Temperature regulation works great. Okay, temperature regulation works great, and we'll talk about that in a second, but let me just, well, hold on. Let me use the example of what I've been doing the whole time here. All right, talking about going outside when it's hot. So here's how the negative feedback mechanism works for our temperature regulation. So I go outside and I decide that in the middle of the day, when it's about 90 degrees, that I'm going to go and chop some wood. So I go outside and I start to chop some wood. My body temperature starts to increase. Okay, and it starts to increase to that 101 range. I fall outside of our normal 99.1 to 96.4 range. So my body's now going to say, hey, listen, we've got to do something to start to cool the body down. So here's what happens. The thermoreceptors send that sensory input that my body temperature is increasing to your brain. Okay, specifically, the structure inside your brain is called the hypothalamus, master gland. It controls your body temperature. So the hypothalamus, being the control center, interprets this information and says, okay, yep, body temperature is going up. We need to fix that. We need to decrease the body temperature because otherwise we're going to have some problems going on. So it will then trigger, right, a couple changes to occur. One, it will cause your sweat glands to start to sweat and perspire. And that process of perspiration, all right, will help to cool the body. That physical process of that water evaporating off your skin gives a cooling effect to your skin. In addition to that, you have blood vessels, tons of blood vessels in your skin, okay? Blood happens to be 1 degree warmer than your normal body temperature, okay? 1 degree Celsius warmer than your normal body temperature. So it's going to move that warm blood to the surface of your skin. That's why you'll see in certain people that are fair skinned, they turn red when it's hot out because they have increased blood flow to the skin. And as that blood is close to the surface there, all right, it gives off the heat that was in that blood and it leaves the body. That too will start to help to decrease your body temperature. Therefore, the resulting action, all right, is going to be in the opposite direction of the stimulus. So we go from that, our body temperature has increased to 101. These changes start to occur. You start to sweat. Blood starts to move towards the surface of your skin, giving off heat. Now your body temperature sinks back down into that 99 degree or 98.6 range. And so therefore you have utilized the negative feedback mechanism. So we have also another mechanism that we utilize for homeostatic systems, and that's positive feedback. Now this is not utilized as much as the negative feedback, okay? So keep in mind, it is used less frequently. All right, but in this situation, all right, we have a stimulus, and what will happen is the actual effector organs will, whatever changes they make, will move in the same direction, all right, as the stimulus. So what does that all mean? Okay, what that means is, all right, what that means is, for example, blood clotting is a great example. Okay, blood clotting will actually, you know, you have a cut and we want to stop blood from leaving the blood vessel. So you'll continue to clot blood in that area as long as there is blood leaving the vessel or that cut remains open. So it continues in the same direction. It'll keep clotting and keep clotting until you stop bleeding. Breastfeeding is another great example. All right, a nursing mother has a baby nursing, all right, suckling on her breast. The sensory receptors in the breast will trigger the control center again. All right, this will be the hypothalamus. The hypothalamus will stimulate the pituitary gland to release oxytocin. Oxytocin is a hormone, all right, that causes milk ejection from the breast. So as long as the baby is there stimulating those receptors around the nipple, all right, that will continue to stimulate the release of oxytocin from the posterior pituitary that will allow the breast glands themselves to eject the milk. Once the baby stops nursing, all right, or as mom starts to wean the baby off of breast milk and maybe onto some solid foods, and she starts to breastfeed less frequently, then her milk production decreases, okay? So positive feedback, again, will not be seen as frequently as negative feedback, but it is utilized. All right. Okay, if there is one slide that you walk away with knowing this should be the slide, okay? It's a great summary of homeostasis, all right? When we describe homeostasis as dynamic, it means it's ever changing, and it needs to be, okay? Because your body's always constantly being challenged with the changing internal and external environments. So homeostasis needs to be dynamic, all right? There are three components. You need to know those three components: receptor, control center, and effector. But for the receptor to work, it needs a stimulus. And that stimulus has to be specific for that receptor. Perfect example, my eyes, okay? My eyes only are affected, all right, by a specific type of stimulus. For example, hearing, okay? My eyes cannot detect sound waves. Those receptors will not pick that up. They can only detect light. And conversely, when we're talking about hearing, your receptors that you have for hearing cannot pick up, all right, or be stimulated by light. Okay, so the receptor, the stimulus has to be specific for that receptor. All right, so you have your receptor, then you have your control center, which is going to initiate, it's going to interpret the sensory information that the receptor sends to it, and then it's going to initiate a response through the effector. And there's two types of effectors, all right, muscles and glands. All right, so keep in mind our control center is either going to utilize the nervous system or the endocrine system. All right, most most of these systems are going to be regulated through negative feedback, some through positive, all right? And if unfortunately the systems fail, then we are considered to be in a state of homeostatic imbalance or a state of disease. Or some folks might say a state of disease. This course is going to be centered on when everything is working normally. We'll talk about some pathology, right, when some things aren't working. All right, so here you can see on this slide here some of our normal ranges for our homeostatic variables. All right, already talked to you about body temperature, 98.1 to 96.4. All right, but the normal is going to be 98 degrees, 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit. Blood sugar, blood glucose, 80 to 110 milligrams per deciliter. And then blood pressure, the ever famous blood pressure. All right, the ranges for that are going to be low blood pressure is going to be anything that's below 90 over 60. And anything over 140 over 90 will be considered to be high blood pressure. So the normal range or the normal numbers that everyone likes to see is 120 over 80. All right, you get to learn about those numbers later on. The top number is the systolic number. That's when the heart is contracting. The bottom number is the diastolic number, and that's when the heart is relaxing. Okay, so 90 over 60 is the low, and 140 over 90 is the high. If you're above 140 over 90, then you're considered to be hypertensive. You have high blood pressure. If you're below 90 over 60, you are hypotensive. You have very low blood pressure. Okay, so how do we get these numbers? What we did is we took a bunch of people, we took all their vitals, weighed them, took their blood pressure, all sorts of things. And so then we came up with a range of what was normal, right? These individuals were considered to be healthy individuals. So pretty much 95% of the population falls in the normal range, but a small percentage, all right, the 5%, all right, they'll be outside of the normal range, but they're still considered healthy, all right? And some of you might be those people, all right? Some folks, I've seen it before, some folks that have a high body temperature, and it's just how they run, okay? But they're in a small percentage, but they're still considered to be healthy. All right. So what happens when you're not in a state of balance for homeostasis, all right? Or when you're in homeostatic imbalance or disease? Diabetes is a perfect example of that, all right? So people that have diabetes, they have a difficulty with regulating their blood sugar or blood glucose levels. And it depends on what type of diabetes that you have, type 1 or type 2, all right? But what will happen is we'll see fluctuations in your blood sugar levels, right? And you can see issues with folks having high blood sugar or high glucose levels because insulin, all right, is usually the hormone that is affected with diabetes. And so if you have high glucose readings, all right, we're checking your blood sugar, all right, usually because insulin is the hormone that decreases your blood sugar levels. And I tell folks, insulin takes macromolecules, glucose, for example, which is a carbohydrate, and it puts it into your cells. So insulin starts with IN, all right? And so it's going to move your glucose into the cells. And if it's moving it into the cells, it moves it from the blood into the cells and it lowers your blood glucose levels, all right? So folks that have some sort of homeostatic imbalance or disease, all right, are going to report to their doctor with certain symptoms, okay? They feel weak, they feel lethargic if we're dealing with diabetes, or they're peeing all the time, all right? They have numbness and tingling in some of their extremities, All right, so they'll come in presenting with certain symptoms. All right, and the doctor is going to have to figure out, or the nurse is going to have to figure out, all right, a diagnosis, because without a diagnosis, it's very difficult, or you really basically can't treat the patient. So first we have to diagnose the patient, and then we can treat the patient. And in most cases, once we have our diagnosis and treat the patient, then we can either give them some medications, have them undergo surgery, or do some other treatments that will help with their condition that we've diagnosed them with. All right, folks. Well, that concludes. I told you that was a quick one. All right, that concludes. All right, that concludes the chapter here. And I'm sorry that I missed your chat here, Kay. What do we do to learn each chapter? For example, do we read the chapter first, then do the SMART book work and quiz? And what is the difference between the Connect program and SMART book? Okay, it's a great question, great question. So, Kay, what I recommend is read the chapter first, all right? And then do the SMART book assignment before you do the quiz, because you'll have done all that. And yes, all of your tests will be, Haley, yes, all of your tests will be online. The Connect program is basically the book manufacturer, McGraw-Hill, that's their website. And so SMART book will be found on the website. So like I said before, if you want to take the assignment, you can go through Blackboard, go under assignments, go under the specific chapter content tab, and open up that chapter, and you'll see the assignments that are due, and you'll just click on the tab and it takes you immediately to the Connect website. So you don't even have to log on to the Connect website. You can just do it all through Blackboard. And that's usually the best way. So I would read the chapter, read the material on the lecture material in Blackboard also, because that's going to be a little bit more of a condensed version. Then do the SMART book, then take your quizzes. And then along the way, if you want to utilize the study guides, you can do that. Before I forget, I know I am not your lab instructor, but I will be sending out some Quizlets for the lab. All right, and so they're great because they're in a flashcard kind of format. So you can access it from your smartphone. If you're sitting waiting for a sub at Subway, you can pull up Quizlet and you can go over some of that material there. All right, so we'll send them. We have a bunch of different resources for you. What should we be prepared for Friday? All right, great question. If you have your lab atlas, what I would recommend that you do, let me just share this real quick here with you. All right, so this is what I would do. Why is that sharing that? Give me 1 second. Naughty. Give me 1 second here. I apologize. So this is what I would do. A good way to prepare for your class is go to Blackboard. Okay. So you log in, boom, here you are. All right. Then what I would do is go to course content, click on that, go to chapter 1, click on that, and then scroll down to chapter 1 lab sessions. You'll click on this and it will take you through, all right, the first chapter that you're going to cover. And it kind of goes over some basic information here, all right, breaks some things down, all right, and then you can go through and label, all right, some of the structures here. You're going to see all these different structures, all right, that you can kind of give you an example of how to learn some of the material. All right, I'm going to skip all that, let you do all that. Cool. This is the one. Yes. Okay. And I would watch this video here. Okay. You see this video here? Chapter 1, general body plan. And what this video is basically, it's going to be with Dr. Renee Pernitzer. All right, you can also use my YouTube channel if you want to, because I do the same thing. All right, and it's going to be basically her going through, or if you use my YouTube channel, me going through all the different items that you need to label. So I'll just click this on here real quick. All right, I'm going to pause that for a second. And if you will skip through a bunch of this. So you get your lab atlas out and you can see she's just basically going through each of the items and so you could label. So that's what I would do if to get yourself prepped for the lab class, because if you have everything labeled already, then Dr. Sharp can kind of go through it with you and you don't have to take time to write everything down while he's going over the different items, all right, for the labeling portion, all right, but also he's going to go through some of the concepts too of the lab material. Lab is going to be more of the anatomy part of the class, whereas lecture is going to be mostly physiology, okay, the function, the how these body systems work. Any other questions for me?